Hi, good evening, everyone. I am McKenna. I'm the owner of Murder by the Book in Houston, Texas. And tonight I'm very excited that we are actually partnering with the Ashland Public Library to bring you Christine Feehan, who is going to be talking about her new book, Murder at Sunrise Lake. We're also going to be joined by a librarian from the the director of the Ashland Public Library, Meena Jain Ashland, and she will be our guest interviewer tonight. But before I bring them on, I just want to mention, as always, that we do a lot of these virtual events. We always appreciate if you consider ordering the author's new book from us. I'll put a link in the comments for more information or to order shortly once the interview starts. And as always, we will be taking questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, don't be shy. Put them in the live chat on YouTube or in the comments on Facebook, and I will get to them in a little bit. So I think that covers it. As always, you can check our Murder by the Book event calendar at murderbooks.com, or I think we just put all of our July virtual events up on Facebook. So there's a packed calendar of things coming up on there. Make sure to check those out so you don't miss any of your favorite authors. So the star of the show this evening is Christine Feehan. Hello, good evening.
Hi, good evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm so excited to chat with you tonight, and thank you so much for being here. I don't think we've ever met before in the store, so thanks to virtual events, it's nice to meet you in person.
Yes. Thank you for having me. It is really nice to meet you.
Likewise. Let me go ahead. Although most people who are watching already know, I'm going to do your formal bio real quick. Christine Feehan is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of many novels, including the Carpathian series, the GhostWalker series, the Leopard series, the Torpedo Ink series, and the Shadow Rider series. And like I said, her brand new book is Murder at Sunrise Lake, and I'll put a link in the comments to that shortly. We're also joined, as I said, by our guest interviewer. Those are always my favorite people because it means all I have to do is sit back and watch. Meena, how are you this evening?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you again for being here and doing this. Meena Jain is the director of the Ashland Public Library in Massachusetts. She's a lifelong reader of romance, a fierce advocate for the genre, and a fangirl of romance authors. She's been reading books by Christine Feehan for years, and according to your bio, can't wait to be in conversation with her. I can't wait to sit back and listen to the conversation. So you two have fun. I'm going to go away. When you're ready for me to come do these crowd questions, just call me back on. Otherwise, I will see you shortly.
Great. Thank you, McKenna. Christine, it's good to see you again. It's been a while.
Very nice to see you too.
Well, we had a wonderful conversation a few months ago, but this is a new book, so we get to talk about some, and it's a new series maybe, so we can talk about that a little bit. But first of all, I know lots of people here know you, but some people are just discovering you. So I'm wondering if you wanted to chat a little bit about yourself, why you became a writer and a romance writer in particular.
Well, I always loved the written word. I always loved stories, even, especially when I was a child, I was always telling very tall tales. And I would tell stories to my brothers and sisters. I have a lot of brothers and sisters, 10 sisters, 3 brothers. Oh. And I would tell them stories all the time. My very first job was actually in a library, so I could read all the books. And I would read to the children at a story hour. And I love to read. And so I think that follows that for me, I wanted to write my own stories as well. I'm still a reader. I'm always looking for new authors so that I can read all the time. And I love to tell stories. So I write them as fast as I can to get to the end because I want to know what happens.
So does that make you a pantser?
Yes. If I plotted out the story, then I would already know what happened, and I'd be bored and wouldn't want to write it, unfortunately. But I didn't intend to ever publish. Actually, I was a martial arts instructor, and I taught women's self-defense. So I was really happy with my little world. And then, I ended up not being able to continue. I taught for about 25, 26 years. And then I had some health issues, and I still had children who, for some reason, thought they needed food.
Kids.
Yeah. I don't understand that, but they really were in the habit of eating all the time. So a girlfriend said, "Hey, send your book in." And at the time I was writing, dark prints. And I said, they don't take vampire romances. Nobody's doing that right now. And she said, "Oh, it's so good. Send it in." And just to kind of make her stop talking, I sent, I did. And nobody would read it. Nobody except for Alicia Condon at Dorchester. And she took it.
So you started the trend.
Yes.
Well, we're all very happy that you did. I mean, you really created a path for other authors too. So, I think as a reader, I'm really thankful for that because I love paranormal mysteries and romances. So let's talk about Murder at Sunrise Lake, which is coming out tomorrow. Everybody, you have to buy it because it's amazing. Full disclosure, I got an ARC. I read it. I did exactly what you said, Christine. I just read and read and read. It was really, no spoilers, no spoilers. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it's different. It's a little different. It's more of a mystery than I usually. I write a lot of thrillers, so I can't say that I don't. But this is set in the Eastern Sierras, and so anybody familiar with Yosemite and the Eastern Sierras will see a lot of places that they're familiar with. If anybody's ever summited Whitney, they might be like, maybe I won't do that again.
I wasn't going to anyways, but now I definitely won't.
So I kind of got the idea. One of my daughters is very adventurous, and she has a little pack of female friends who are they have very powerful jobs, and they're all adventurous as well. They all hike, and they climb boulders, and they climb mountains, and they do all these crazy things. And they were all sitting around talking about all these different things, places they go and hikes that they go on, like the JMT Trail. And of course, me, I was sitting there thinking, what about a serial killer in that place? Man, that'd be kind of cool. Because, the way my
definitions of cool are different.
I know, right? So I'm always saying to her, "Hey, could you, when you're on that hike, could you just look around and take pictures where a killer might be hiding?" And she said, "Mom, I'm in a tent alone by myself." "Yeah, but you're used to that, honey. Just do it for me." That's her life,
Yes. So this was go ahead.
Yeah. So the whole point of this was I set up this community, and she's been there for 7 years. She runs a resort, the heroine does, and she loves her friends. They have a really tight group of friends. And she realizes that there is a killer in this tight-knit community, and maybe it's one of her friends, and maybe they're going to kill one of her friends. And she has to figure out who it is. She can't go to the police because nobody's going to believe her, because it all looks like accidents, which is very easy to do. When I talk to the sheriff and talk to search and rescue, they're like, yeah, that often happens. There's no evidence. So it seemed very real.
It seemed real to me. I mean, I could just see it. Your descriptions of the Sierras were just so dynamic and wonderful. But it is a little bit of a departure for you in the sense that I thought of it more of a paranormal suspense rather than with a romantic element rather than paranormal romance. Is that how you kind of saw it as well?
Yes. Yes. Of course, it had to have a romance because I can't write a book or see a movie that doesn't have some element of romance in it. That's important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just have to have that in there or I'm not satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was definitely going to be in there.
I think that's probably true for your readers too. And I really, again, no spoilers, but I like the romance because in some of, in other paranormals, it's often, fated mate kind of thing. But these guys really worked at it and got there. And he really, he did the work. It was great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I liked him a lot. He was a cool guy.
Yes. So how did you decide to set up a new series, or is this a new series? I saw on your website that it's supposed to be a single title, but you set it up so that I want to know more. I want to know everything about every one of those characters. Thank you, Christine Feehan.
I can't help myself. I end up loving the characters in a book. And so I really wanted this. I did make it a standalone. Like I closed every element except for the characters because I love them so much. So if I do write about them, each of them would have a book that was a standalone, mm-hmm. except for the fact that the characters would be there together. Mm-hmm. I might not even put them in the same place. I might stick them someplace else where, somebody would travel someplace, but I like those characters so much. I might use them because they're just so great together and they have such a strong, powerful friendship, mm-hmm. which, yourself, that women empower one another and they do have we choose each other. Mm-hmm. And we lift each other up and we make each other better. And the longer you have those friendships and the tighter they become, you can depend on that person. Even if you don't see them for long periods of time, mm-hmm. you know that they're there in your life.
Right. And actually, this is one of my questions later on, is because you do have such deep friendships in all of your books, I think, and this one in particular with the women. And you talked about your daughter having a strong friend circle, but does this come from you as well? Do you have a strong group that you rely on and that you pull from when you're writing these kind of scenes?
Yes, I do. Okay. I've had the same group of friends. They're authors, and some of them are published and some of them are not. But we've been together for well over 20 years, some of us 30 years. And we don't count our years anymore. But we really know that I know if somebody says to me, Christine, this isn't going to work, and this is the reason why, I'm going to listen to them mm-hmm. because they have my best interest at heart and they know what they're talking about. And I believe them, mm-hmm. So, and when I say it to them, they know the same thing about me. I want them to succeed and they want me to succeed. Mm-hmm. And I want the best book possible for my reader. I'm always striving to improve. I know some of my friends are really great at writing villains. And I'm always trying to make a better villain. I just really want that great villain. So
you always have such good villains because they're not evil. They're just bad.
Well, because I think people are three-dimensional. Nobody's all bad mm-hmm. and all good.
Right.
They're just not. Mm-hmm. And so some of them really believe in what they're doing and they think they're right. Mm-hmm. And that's the worst kind sometimes because you can't reason with them.
Right. Yeah, definitely not reasoning with your bad guys. But I wanted to go back to the friendship for a second, because in your books, with the friendships, that's where I always find the most humor. You think with this dark story, it's going to be really heavy, but there's always like this funny scene. And this one in particular, when they were all sitting around talking, and I won't, again, no spoilers, but is that your experience of female friendships too?
Oh yeah. I have, I started out with 10 sisters. All of us are close. We all are really close to one another, even now, and all the things you go through. I mean, you can't have that many sisters in the family and not have seen things that happen. Then all of us have lots of children and lots of girls. And then we have circles of friends, and those friends are tight. I've had my friends for 30 years, the ones that are close to me. And I can't say that I have this massive amount of friends. The ones that are close to me, maybe I have 5 or 6 friends that are tight friends. And, we're really close. And so even if they live, and some of them live way across the country from me, but I know that if I call them, they'll drop everything and come. We've lost children in our family, and I will tell you, our friends they're the first people here. When something like that happens, absolutely you can count on them, and they know they can count on me.
Absolutely. And I was not curious, but I was struck by the fact that Stella, who's the main character in Murder at Sunrise Lake, wasn't able to open herself up to a relationship except with her friends. She was completely closed off. She even thought she was closed off to her friends, but she actually had space in her heart for them.
Yeah, because I think that's another thing that women do. You think these things about yourself. Everybody has images of themselves, and a lot of times it's from your childhood, something that has happened, and you have these things, and you have this false image of yourself, and you're not really like that. And friends see you, they see the real you, but when you look in the mirror, you don't see that. And I think all women are like that. All of us look at each other. I mean, look at ourselves with these really harsh eyes. Our friends don't look at us that way.
You're so right. So right. And it comes through in your books, which is, I think, really nice for women, especially, to be reading about other women that can open themselves to each other. And another theme that runs through most of your series is found families. I really like that about the Sisters of the Heart series that you had, and I also found that with Murder at Sunrise Lake. So you have the friends group, and then you have these groups where they find each other and they feel like they're family, and maybe those are the same things.
Well, I think there's so many people out there who don't have, they don't realize they come from, say, a birth family that don't treat them the way. Not every birth family is that great. Like, they're just not. I mean, I'd like to say they were, but they're not. And they make you feel horrible about yourself. And, you don't have to stay. And when you find other people, or you lose that birth family, and that can happen as well in accidents or however it does happen, but you find other people that do treat you like you're loved, and you become very close to them, like the Sisters of the Heart, or however it works out, and you love them and they love you, and you form that family. And I think that's important. And it can be grandparents, it can be older people, it can be young people. You hang on to that. You hang on to the people that you that let you into their life and really do care about you, and because it enriches your life so much.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think your books give people that sense of hope that even though they maybe come from a family that they didn't enjoy, or that, wasn't as supportive as they would like, that there are people out there that they can find that will give that to them.
Well, that's what I try to do. All of my books deal with women's issues, all of them. And the point being that all of us have had things happen to us, women all over the world, not just in the US, but all over the world have had really bad things happen for most of us. And I think the message that I try the hardest in my books is you stand back up, and good things can happen and will happen. And you can get stronger. If you have children, you're going to teach them. I never wanted my boys to ever think it was okay to ever hit someone you love. I never wanted them to see that in a home. And I never wanted my daughters to think it was okay to be hit or abused in any way. And, when you're in those situations, it's not always easy to get out of them. And the older you were, like I was in a, older generation where they didn't have safe homes, and cops would walk the guy around the corner, and then the other cop would say to you, "What did you do to provoke him?" It was always the woman's fault. Mm-hmm. And so, generations of abusers would just keep going. Mm-hmm. And now I think when I write a book, I try to let women know there's a way to live again, and there's hope, and there's a way to love again. And all women react differently to any kind of, there's no set way that a woman reacts to a thing that happens to them, an issue that happens. And so I try to have many different reactions, have a heroine that reacts differently in each of the books, because you want to touch as many people as you can, right, so that they feel that. And also, a lot of times husbands will, call crisis lines and say, "This is going on and I don't know how to handle it. How do I handle it?" So you try to put that in the books. Mm-hmm. If there's autism and a person says, I don't know what to do, you try to put that in the books. Mm-hmm. It doesn't always work for everybody, because there's so many different ways and so many different, children, and you can't hit them all, right.
You've gotten a lot, though. In fact, the last time we spoke, I think before we actually had our actual meeting, I said to you something about how I was so upset about what happened to Elle in the last book of the Sea Haven Sisters series. And you said, I thought was really interesting, that you were trying to shine a light on human trafficking. And that was your way of doing it. It was shocking and it was difficult, but it was also important to you. And so I'm wondering if in Murder at Sunrise Lake, if there's some topic or cause that you kind of wanted to bring to light in this book.
Actually, this is one of the few books that I didn't really do that with. I didn't. It was more about the friendships and the way I think women empowerment and the strength that women have when they are together. Mm-hmm. I didn't really have the big issues that I normally do in a lot of my books. Torpedo Ink is clearly about men or young boys who have been molested. The human trafficking thing was before the big human trafficking broke open. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to bring attention to that. And so it was a beloved character and it was shocking to people, Yeah, it was. And it was hard to write.
Mhm.
And I really downplayed that. You should have seen me reading the reports. It was horrible.
Oh no.
And it's the same thing when I read the reports and talk to counselors and things with the Torpedo Ink. Sometimes I can't even take it. I have to just stop and walk away from it for a while because it's just so difficult, you know.
It sounds to me like you are sort of a warrior, you know, teaching self-defense when you were younger and then taking it on in your books. It's just amazing. You're amazing. And I think you've changed a lot of people's lives and thinking.
Well, I try, you know, I used to be able to take in children. I'm too old to do that now. And so I wanted to find a way to help people. And in a lot of ways, I know that I have from the letters I've gotten or when I've gone to a convention and had people come up to me and talk to me about it. And that's been very rewarding. Other people don't get it. Sometimes they read a book and it's just face value for them, or they get very upset about the book. And I don't blame them. You know, I mean, all books are not for everybody. And most people read, they pick up a book and they think this is going to be a sweet romance. My books are not like that. They're very edgy. This particular book, I wouldn't call edgy. I think anybody could. Okay. I suppose murder could be considered edgy.
Well, and the backgrounds of your characters, each and every one of them have had something difficult happen to them, and yet they've, you know, moved forward.
Yes. And I will say that most of that, a lot of that might or might not be true. Came from some background that I may or may not have found somewhere.
You're killing me, man.
I know. I read a lot of, I cull through things and I talk to people and I find out these things and I have to write about them.
And, you know, the first book is coming out tomorrow, which means that I have to wait like a year at least for the next standalone. So, all right, I will deal with it because as I do, I just wait for your books. I love them.
Thank you.
I think there are a lot of people here that are here for the same reason, because we love your books. And because they're dark, you know, because that is, you know, maybe there's a paranormal element to it, but like you said, we can often see something that happened in our lives happening in the lives of your characters.
Yes, it's true. I, you know, because I worked so much with, you know, abused children and abused teens and unwed mothers who would get kicked out of their homes and boys found in the forest that their fathers tried to kill them, you know, just like crazy stuff. And you do that and you read these reports that are just heartbreaking. And it changes your life, you know, it just does. And I got to a point where, you know, it just did. And I can't help but put those things in my books.
I know that this is not about me, but my first career before I became a librarian was as a social worker. And so when I read your books, I really appreciate the work that the characters go through to get better and be happy. So I think whatever research you're doing is phenomenal.
Thank you. I try after I read everything, I try to actually talk to counselors. I don't just wing it. I really do try to talk to primary sources all the time.
So a question that came up earlier today when I was talking about the fact that I was going to be talking to you was that a friend asked that while your settings, themes, and characters have some similar threads between the series, you have what seems to be a pretty deep immersion into the wildly varied worlds of your books. Tropical jungles, bustling cities, charming seaside villages, now the Sierras, but also some very dark underbellies of the world. Have you spent time in these location settings? Have you ever gone underground to like research, or this is all Google and imagination?
No, I actually have gone to some of these places. My thing is the United States. The places outside of the United States, one of my daughters researches for me. She has been in the Amazon, and she's been in a volcano, and she's been all over the world and done those things for me. I can't travel out of the United States. She actually has twice been ready to go, and then the embassy has said you can't go there now because it's a hot spot. So, but she definitely, Thailand, and it's always in some very far outback place, and so she's really intrepid, and so she does that, and she videotapes and she photographs and she journals while she's doing all of it. And she always has a guide that takes her way out in the middle of nowhere. And she fortunately does climb and does this whole mountain thing. And so she's been a really huge help to me. And so she does that. Then I have a researcher who researches things like where are the rebels in the Congo, and I make her do that. So my computer is not flagged. Hers is, which yes, that's been done before. And once I found that out, I'm like, you do the research.
I did wonder what your browser history looks like.
Yes. That was a really fun one. So, and then a couple times when I have a friend who was kind of a think tank for the Defense Department, and we were coming up. I say we, really it was him, because he's like way intelligent. He was coming up with a weapon for me for the Navy, was a submarine that I needed. And my nephew was working for the Navy at the time. And so we were going back and forth, and I'm like, what do you think about this? And pretty soon he's like, this is too real, Christine. Maybe we better not be doing this. And then next thing I know, I get this little letter from the NCIS, and I'm like, oh no. I can tell you, I have been in some pretty dicey situations sometimes.
Tell us.
I put myself and my poor son, who goes, Mom, we can't be here. We're going to get arrested. Get off the island. Get off the island. The alligator's going to eat us. This is going to happen.
It was fascinating to me that your life sort of imitates your art, in that you're a bit intrepid too.
Well, I always tell people I'm very boring.
And then you go on these Zoom chats and you're like, oh, I've done some stuff.
I start talking too much. I try to really look like this. Really, I was in this, they were interviewing me on a TV thing. And so they had like the cool studio, and they had the whole thing all set up. And then the first question, he asked me about my heroine. It was one of the dark books. And I said, Dark Slayer, I think. And I said, oh, the heroine was, chopped up in little pieces and strewn across a meadow for the wolves to eat. And there's this dead silence, and every guy in the room stops what they were doing and they turn around and look at me. And they stop recording, and the interviewer goes, "You look so normal." I'm like, yeah, I'm not.
Oh, I mean, like Stephen King looks like he's probably been in a couple of horror movies, but you look normal.
And my daughter always says to me, the one that has to go do all these things and take pictures while she's, in the middle of camping all by herself out in the wilderness. She goes, "Mom, I really need therapy. You know that, don't you?" Yes, honey.
Hey, if we don't send him to therapy for something, what good are we?
Exactly. And I told her, I said, "Your life would be boring without your mother."
It sounds like it. Although she does sound really adventurous.
Oh, she is.
Okay, so let me get back to my questions because I know we have some time for audience questions as well. Let's see. I know you said you're a pantser, you're not a plotter, but how do you do the Carpathian series without plotting?
Oh, that's easy. That's really easy. Because I don't have to worry about, like on this one, this was the hardest one. And I did actually have to do a little plotting on this because I had to know who the killer was.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the only one. But when I do the Carpathian series, whoever speaks to me the loudest gets a book.
Mm-hmm.
And the minute he does or she does, then they tell the story. And I just follow wherever they lead me.
Well, and us readers follow you wherever you lead us. So it's great. So on... I'm sorry, I'm getting confused by my questions and some from McKenna. So we are getting some questions from your fans that are watching. So I'm going to hand this over to McKenna to come back and start asking those questions. Thank you so much, Christine. This is fascinating.
Oh, thank you.
Great job, you two. So one of the things that's come up, not on our feed where I can pop it on the screen, but I guess on a different Facebook stream that's been shared is who is the next couple to find love in the Leopard series?
Oh my gosh, you would ask me that question. You know what? I have no idea. And that is the truth. I have not started that book. That book is way down the line. And until I actually get to them, there's been a couple that have been playing around in my head. But until I actually start the book, I never reveal the couple because a few times I've been totally wrong. So I'm sorry, I can't answer your question.
Okay, here's another one from KS. Would you consider doing a series with dragons like Anne McCaffrey and Robin Hobb have done?
Sure, I would. I love dragons. I just, at the time, I'm doing 6 books a year. And I have another little project I'm working on, which who knows if I'll ever get it off the ground. So I have no idea if I would ever have the time to do it. But, I love dragons, so who knows?
Well, speaking of other projects that you're working on, we have a question here from Angela. Can you have Christine talk a little bit about her other books that are coming out soon?
Okay. Yes, I have a few books that are coming. Let me see what they are. I have, wait, this is not going to help me. I have Dark Tarot, and I'm very excited about that book. It is completely different from all my other dark books. You will be able to revisit a few of the other couples and see what they're doing and where they are. And so I'm kind of excited about that because when I saw them, I was super excited. And I didn't expect the book to go the way it did. And I revisited some people that I was kind of surprised where the book took me. And it is very different. The hero is Sandhu, which I always kind of wanted to write his book, and 4 of the other ancients are traveling with him. And so it's kind of funny. There's a little comedy there. So it's fun. It's a fun book, and one that's very different. It's a little longer than the others because of all the tarot cards. You have to go through the whole deck. And then Annihilation Road. Dark Tarot comes out in November. And then Annihilation Road is Savage and Seashell. And that is their first book. And that's where he meets her and they fall in love. And I think anybody could read that book that reads all of the Torpedo Ink series. If you read the series and you like the series, I think you could easily read that book. There's nothing in it that isn't in any of the other Torpedo Inks, even though he is a sadist, a sexual sadist. So there's no real triggers in that book. In fact, there's less than in other books because, they're really falling in love. And so it's more about that emotional journey. The next book follows it. It's a standalone. It's complete in itself. So anybody who just wants to read that book can just pick up that book and read it, and they would be satisfied with the story. Now, there's always the arc that goes through that is the club arc. So then there's Savage Road that follows it the very next month. So there's 1 and then there's 2. That in itself is a complete book. And that again is Savage and Seashell. And that is more along the lines of a book that I would say to you has some triggers in it. There's 3 scenes in it. I wrote them so you could skip them if you wanted to. There's nothing in there those scenes that you would have to read that you would lose anything in the book itself. I was very careful to do that. So anybody who wants to pick up the book and skip those scenes, you could easily do that. But they are in there, and I wrote a letter in the front of both books to make sure that you knew that what you were getting into before you read them. So, but that continues the story of the 2 of them and talks about their actual life together. So,
can I ask a question about? Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have another book?
Sure. No, go ahead.
I have a question about, and is that okay, McKenna?
Of course.
Okay. So I was actually wondering this earlier, and you brought it up with the trigger warnings and things like that you're doing now in your books, is that, when you first started writing in the Dark series, like I remember reading Gregory's story and thinking, ooh, that guy's really beyond alpha, and now you're talking about trigger warnings. I'm wondering if in the, since you've been writing, has your writing changed around because of the Me Too movement or being more sensitive to those kind of things, alpha males, things like that?
Not really. I was worried. I was not going to publish. I never intended to publish Savage's stories. Never.
Oh.
But I received so many letters. And I actually went on my website and asked the question, why in the world do you want his story when you know he's a sadist? And everybody said, well, because we want him to have a happy ending. And I said, you can't cure a sexual sadist. And he's not a true sexual sadist because he wasn't, he doesn't humiliate people, and he's on a cycle. And there's a reason for that because of the way he was, treated as a child. Mm-hmm. And so, and I talked a great deal to counselors and found out everything I could, but there was really no curing him. And it made me so sad. And I wanted to write his story and find somebody for him. And so I was already doing that for myself, mm-hmm. but I did not intend to ever share that with anybody because I felt like that it would probably be too much for readers, Mm. And then I started just receiving so many letters, and so I finally thought, I talked to my editor about it, and she said, well, we can put warnings on that book. And then if people don't want to pick it up, it's okay. So I think the first book, I think is going to be perfectly fine for anybody that reads Torpedo Ink.
Mm-hmm.
The second book, I really wanted people to know what they were getting into. And I was careful to only put 3 scenes in there, and they're pretty brief scenes.
Mm-hmm.
So because I wanted them to see the first 2, which he was careful with her. The last scene, it's an addiction. Mm-hmm. And you had to see what it was. And I wanted everyone to see her strength when she stops him. Mm-hmm. And, because that's important. And otherwise, as a couple, they're not ever going to work, right? So anyway, that was my reasoning behind that. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so then I'm working on Phantom Game, which is a really cool book, one of the coolest books I've ever written. And I'm so excited about it. I just am like, I started doing this research, and then I was like, okay, this is the coolest of the cool. Once I start doing research, I'm nutty and I can't stop myself. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. So I'm really excited about that book. And then I'm have Shadow Fire, which is shadow book. So I'm kind of excited about writing that. And then I'll be writing Dark Whisper and then Leopard Scar. So we'll see.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Quite the lineup. So you were talking about actually just a minute ago how, you wanted this character to have a happy ending. And we have a question that kind of goes in with that. How do you not let what you've learned during your research affect you or depress you? How do you let it go?
The hardest always is Torpedo Ink. Reading terrible stories about those young men. Sometimes I can't stand it, and it does. It's very hard. And I actually have to stop. I just stop and I get up and I walk away from it for a while. And one of the worst things is when I'm with people in public, because I'm pretty stoic and I'm talking to them and they bring up Torpedo Ink, and for some reason I burst into tears. And it's so awful. And I don't know why I do that. I just don't like that. But, or I have a young man who will come up to me and start talking to me. And usually they're in their 20s and they've never talked about it before. That is so hard to be able to just talk with them. And it is hard. It's hard to read about, and then it's hard to write about. And I try not to put I never try to put graphic details that much, just enough so that the reader can understand how the man got to be the way he is. Because if you don't get enough, then you aren't going to have any sympathy for him. Because really, some of them you just want to kick if you don't know what caused them to be the way they are. And you want them, I started them way over here, and I'm trying to bring them into, like Czar, their president, is trying to bring them into a community and a family. He's trying to get them so they understand what that is when they never had it. So, fortunately, when I talked to counselors, I did one thing right, which I did inadvertently, and that was because there was a lot of them and they had a code. He gave them a code, even though they were children, and that saved them. If there'd only been one of them, they probably wouldn't have been able to do that. But because there was a lot of them and they watched each other that was what saved them all. And so they rely on him. And he said, okay, we're going to go to this place and we are going to find families and we are going to be in a community. And so now they're learning to do that.
Oh,
my dog barked, and so I muted myself. And forgot to unmute myself. Okay, she stopped barking, so we're good. Might we see another book like Dark Celebration?
When I wrote Dark Celebration, I only had a certain number of characters. Now I have a lot of characters. It's much harder to write a book like that. So I try to break it down a little bit. And if I'm in a certain place, I'll bring in some characters, that are there. But to write another book like Dark Celebration would be almost virtually impossible. There's just too many characters, and I wouldn't have enough of a storyline to do it. It would be, there'd be no story. There'd just be a lot of names in the book.
Yeah. We have some more questions, but before I get to those, I want to mention that there's a sweepstakes. I put the link to a sweepstakes in the comments that your publisher is doing a giveaway for a free mass market. So make sure to scroll through the comments. It's only for the people who are watching live, so you've got about 5 more minutes to do it. I meant to mention it earlier, and it also will allow you to sign up for Christine's email newsletter. There's an opt-in for our newsletter if you'd like. So make sure to find that link so you can get entered in that giveaway. Okay, another question. I'm going to paraphrase, but it's a question from Jennifer. How long have you been writing for?
Well, I've been publishing, maybe 25 years. But writing, I've actually been doing that since I could string together sentences. They were the worst stories on the face of the earth, but I made my brothers and sisters listen to me when I wrote them, and they better say they were good or I was going to beat them up.
Funny. Okay. How do you choose the characters' names?
That's really interesting and very hard. If I give a character the wrong name, I can't move the story forward. So I pour through every kind of baby book there is. I go online and I look at tons and tons and tons of names from all different countries, rare names, fun names, I can spend hours looking at names, and I make lists of names that I like. They have to be spelled a certain way. It's really hard because seriously, if I don't have the right name and the right spelling, the book will not move. It's really hard.
Yeah. I think you mentioned that there's another one of these coming up, but I don't think you elaborated on it. What's next, or who's next for the Shadow Rider series?
I have not started that book either, but I believe it's Eli.
All right. Here is a very specific question. Are you planning on attending Book Lovers Con this year?
I wish I could, but I can't do it this year. I was trying to look for some conferences closer to I'm on the West Coast, and I was trying to find something small and closer to my side of the, so that I could do something here on the West Coast, but I haven't found anything, that is small and close to me. But I'd like to do something. It'd be nice to actually see somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I think this is going to be our last question, unless the one that just showed up moves me. Let's see. How do you decide which series you work on next?
They kind of come in an order in my head. I've been doing them for so long now that the book actually pushes forward in a certain order now. And so I kind of know which book I'm going to work on. Torpedo Ink, I always work on at night because I trained myself to do that. But the other books I work on in a certain order all the time. I started Torpedo Ink just for me. And so I did it at night when, nobody was around. But the others, I knew when they were going to come out. So I would always say, okay, I'm going to work on this one. And then my brain just kind of follows that pattern.
Yeah. It's just which one is coming next in the circuit.
Yeah.
All right. I think that we have done it. Thank you both so much. Thanks to Erin and your publisher for helping organize this. Thanks so much to you, Meena, for a great conversation and for being a guest interviewer. It's been a treat. And most especially, thanks to Christine. Your new book's out tomorrow. Like I said, there's links in the comments if you'd like to order. And this has been a real treat. Thanks to everyone for watching.
Yes.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you. I'm going to try to get out to the West Coast now that I know that's where you are.
I am.
All right. I'm going to sign us off. Everyone have a great night.
Thanks.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.